Question number 12, Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Development. Asks, by what percentage have child poverty levels changed since the government took office, based on the constant value below 60% of median incomes and after housing cost measure included in the Ministry of Social Development's report on household incomes?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, the rate on that one measure specified went from 22% in the 2008-9 survey to 24% in the 2010-11 survey and back to 22% in the 2012-13, which shows that we are recovering from the recession. There are a range of measures in the Child Poverty Monitor released today, and MSD regularly looks at a range of measures, but the issues around poverty are complex, and research shows that a number of measures need to be used. This government is focused on practical help rather than arguing over individual measurement. Things are improving, but there's still a long way to go, and as I say, the issues can be complex and often intergenerational.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Based on her interview with Radio New Zealand this morning, where she stated, quote, "What you describe as poverty is not what I might describe as poverty," how does she describe poverty and how many children are living in it?
Honourable Anne Tolley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is absolutely correct. So poverty is a scale. And it is very important, and the research shows it is very important to understand what aspect of poverty you are talking about. So what that member might describe as poverty might be quite different from what another measure is describing as poverty. That's exactly what the research shows.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order. Order. Point of order, Jacinda Ardern.
Mr. Speaker, the member only reiterated really my question. My question was, how would the minister describe poverty, therefore, and how many children are living in it? Well, she can choose to answer one or the other, but one would be nice.
Further, well, she certainly answered one. The question wasn't, as the members just said, it was a lot more full than that. It asked how the minister would describe poverty, and the minister went on to describe that it was a scale, that there were various aspects for measuring it. Order. If the member wants to question whether the answer is adequate, she should show the manners to listen to my justifying that the minister has addressed the question. If she wants to make further progress, make it using concise supplementaries. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary question to the minister. What target will she set to reduce child poverty?
Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, this government has already set results targets and report regularly on progress, and we're finding that clarity and accountability is well received and is what matters to New Zealanders. And I remind the member that the Salvation Army said in 2008, our measures of progress at this time next year should not just be those of how much our economy has grown. More relevant measures could be those of how few people are locked up in prison, how few violent crimes are committed, and how much better children in poorer schools are achieving. Those are the sorts of targets this government has set and is reporting on regularly.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. My question was very straightforward and explicit. It was, what target will she set to reduce child poverty?
Order. And again, I accept the member may have had difficulty listening to the answer, because I did as well, because there was a lot of noise coming from members around her. But there was discussion in the answer about targets and measures. One of them I did pick up was the measurement of incarceration rates. Now, that is the minister's answer. Order! If the member is going to continue to raise every time questions around her what she considers to be an unsatisfactory addressing of the question, I will attempt to explain to the minister, to the member, while I think it's satisfactory. But we'll make no progress at all if the member is going to continue to yell at me when I'm standing on my feet. Does the member have a further supplementary? Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. Can the Minister explain how targets to reducing incarceration rates have anything to do with improving the well-being of a child living in poverty?
Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I would love to. There are about 23,000 children at any one time living in New Zealand that have a parent in prison. If the member does not think that that affects long-term the economic, social and emotional well-being of children, then that member has a very different concept of poverty than I do.
Order. That concludes questions for oral answer. Order. I call on government orders of the day, numbers 1.